Hi, and welcome to Fan Talk. Today we are going to talk about the upper-class Downton Abbey movie that came out last weekend.
The snooty snoots from England.
Hey, I've talked to several people that haven't watched the series and actually enjoyed it.
No, like
it's accessible.
I actually did not go and watch this one yet. Out of all the films this weekend, I actually went and caught Ad Astra. I went and watched Rambo. I didn't go and watch this one. I am going to, though, because I started the series and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to watch the movie and then I'll go back and watch the series. So, and you're right, the little bit of the series I watched, it was fantastic. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a high-paced, well-written series.
Yeah.
And it's got a massive cast in the series, which I'm actually going to touch on here in a minute because, first of all, spoilers if you haven't seen Downton Abbey, but we'll be talking about some of the plot points, but not a huge amount. There's not really a huge amount of plot points to talk about as far as like giving anything away. They tell you in the preview the king's coming to visit.
Yeah.
And that is the central skeleton of which the plot is hung. That's that simple.
And that never happened in the series.
That's never happened in the series. Okay. But like the movie, the series is a serialized where you have about 25 to 30 named primary characters that have storylines that weave in and out of episodes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they're heavily featured in episodes, sometimes they're not, because you can only give so much screen time to so many people in one episode.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like any TV series. I mean, if you think about it, West Wing would be a great example. There's literally tons of characters. In some episodes, you have Josh as the main character, and sometimes it's the president. So it just kind of depends on the episode.
And my example on this one would be, like Star Trek Next Generation. Much smaller cast compared to Downton, but you still have a fairly large number of main character or named characters that are regulars. Mm-hmm. Each episode will feature one primary, sometimes two primary characters with a background subplot of another one or two.
Yeah.
And that's how they can give all the characters screen time. But in the movies, it's always the same. It's always Picard, Data, and the same two or three that have the primary spot, and the other ones kind of go to the background. Like Dr. Crusher isn't the lead in any of the movies.
Yes.
Same thing kind of with Downton. And I'm going to go back to that. Then this was definitely some great fan service. Almost all the main characters are back. I think there's only 5 named primary characters I counted that I didn't see on there. And once again, these are ones that are more to the side and weren't particularly missed in the setting that they had this. Mm-hmm. So hopefully they can incorporate them later in the future, but also only so much you can fit into one movie. And then they had what I counted 10 upstairs family characters plus the 4 children. Yeah. And they had 10 downstairs servant characters in addition to the new characters introduced in the movie. Okay. So that's a lot of faces and dialogue to weave.
Yeah. And it's a dialogue heavy film.
Right. And they did highlight on some of the main ones, obviously the Dowager Countess, who is steals every scene she's in, is Maggie Smith. Mm-hmm. Gets all the best lines. Tom Branson is heavily featured in the movie. He's my personal favorite, and it's really good to have storyline circle around him because he's kind of like he's the everyman kind of entrance into this life. So he's very relatable and accessible, I think, to most audiences because he wasn't from aristocrats.
Yeah, he wasn't from money.
He was originally the chauffeur who married into the family. So he's very easy to relate to. Then from the family itself, Mary has always been the main character, if you had to name one in the show. And then from the downstairs cast, they really just seem to highlight primarily on Anna as being kind of like the one they gave kind of a lot of the leadership or lines to. Everyone gets their lines, everyone gets their scene, everyone gets to, have their little, song and dance as far as, showing off the character a little bit or, getting their screen time. But those are the ones that they seem to primarily focus on because they can't give everyone a subplot.
Yeah.
And it said this, like the king coming to visit is the main skeleton of the plot, and they hang a lot of subplots on it. And another thing about this, and I don't know if it's a criticism or just the way it is, and the series, you got all these plots that might take whole seasons or more to work out the issues, and you don't really know how it's going to go ultimately. But in a movie, you just know, especially as a big fan of movies, that at the end of the movie, everything's going to be fine, especially in this kind of movie. Mm-hmm. And so, you know that things are being stolen and pickpocketed from around the house. Well, it's going to be one of the new people coming around from the king's staff because it's not going to be one of the established characters.
Exactly.
And they're going to get caught, and it's going to work out fine.
Yeah.
And assassination plot on the king. They're going to try and drag a certain character into it because of politics of that character. you know that the character's not really going to do it because he's faithful to the people around him, even though he might think politically other things, and he's going to then flip on the person that's going to do the assassination attempt. So there's no real threats or conflict in this movie.
Yeah.
There's just kind of these implied ones which all basically go away and get resolved for themselves in a nice tidy Hollywood fashion. That's maybe my biggest complaint about the movie is it's a 2-hour episode. That's not really it's not a big blown up theatrical. It is, but it's not a big blown up theatrical storyline and everything else. It's staying with the same universe, very kind of small world that they're in. And I don't mean that in any kind of negative way. I just mean that they're not making a huge, not like traveling to America or doing like this big thing with it. They're staying in their house and doing all this stuff. And it's saying this really could have been a direct-to-TV 2-hour episode. And it would have fit in just perfectly with the other ones. So, which is also, I think, what the fans want. So it's okay. I mean,
again, this is like a good fan service kind of film, and that's everything that I've read so far has pretty much said that. Almost to a T, what you've said is that this very well could have just been released on television, and it would have been accepted, and that it fit right in with the rest of them. So, I mean, there can be things to be said about why would you make a big Hollywood film out of this and just do that, not actually try and go that extra mile, maybe change it up, this, that, and the other. But on the same note, I would say that that's the wrong thing to do, because how many times have you and I said that like people, they try to take like something that's good and they change it, and it fundamentally irritates fans. So to me, I want to say hats off.
They did not change the formula.
Yeah, because the hats off to them, because in the world of Star Wars and Marvel and a lot of things that I'm going to go into later videos, where fans like myself are becoming more and more irritated because it seems like people don't care about the fans. They just care about doing whatever the heck they want to do. It looks like somebody got it right.
Yeah, and all the same people involved were the same people from the show, and made by one of the minor studio companies, so they didn't have a whole lot of fingers meddling. And I don't think I would actually change anything about it. I'm just was pointing out kind of the things that make it different from the series, and also because of the fact it's its own contained 2-hour movie, you're going to have all those like little plot hole or plot points patched up by the end. So,
and you can say that about any film. I mean, if you're watching, a Die Hard film, John McClane ain't gonna die at the end.
But having said that, there's been a lot of movies lately that are expecting a series or a franchise, Alita, where they don't resolve the ultimate issue, and they put out all these feelers, like this world building that they'll never get to go back to because they didn't make a good movie in the first place.
Exactly.
And this completely avoided that. They can come back and do as many sequels as they want on this, so they keep the same basic idea. This would be great. This is another movie where the concept of Chekhov's gun comes into play, in my opinion. I was thinking this when I was watching it. The concept of Chekhov's gun is like on a stage play. If you're going to have a gun on stage, it has to come into the plot, otherwise it's wasted. Why is it there other than distraction? If it's there, it's got to have a reason. And so that's the name of it. So it's one of those things like, in a decent way, at least the very minimum, a decently written movie, if you're going to have dialogue about something, like talking about, for example, why are these trinkets over from the shelf missing? Well, that's obviously foreshadowing, but it's... You can see all these things, like when they put them out in the movie, like all these different plot points they had in this movie, they were just, to me, all Chekhov's guns, because like, that's going to come up again, that's going to come up again, that's going to come up again. And then they kind of finally weave it all together, and it's like, yeah, I was right. Anyway, to me, it was almost a case in point of that whole concept. They don't have, with 30 or 25 characters or so, and a 2-hour movie, you don't have time to have sloppy dialogue that is there for no reason. So it all flows to something, which is good writing, I thought. Just a little bit on the history of the Downton Abbey, written and produced by the Julian Fellows, who created the movie Gosford Park back in the day, early 2000s. It's also very similar, about the servants and the family and aristocratic England with dealing with a murder. Did very well, won some Oscars, and he wrote a sequel to that, and then decided that he just had too many story ideas for the sequel, converted it to TV show Downton Abbey, which is also why there are so many ideas and retreads in Downton that you might say, it was like, that's kind of, they had the same thing in Gosford Park. Well, that's why. As far as the characters that were missing from this movie, Lady Rosamund, the Earl's sister, she lives in London, so but she was a pretty big character in the show. But there's really no reason to have her, so I mean it explains why she's not there. The Maggie Smith's Countess, her staff of Spratt and Dunkirk were not present, but they never showed her house. She was always over at the main house, so that's fine. Lily James' character Rose and her husband Atticus were not present, but they also showed in the series that they moved off to America towards the end of it. The town doctor was not present, and he was in a ton of episodes, but he just wasn't needed in this, and I get that. And then finally, Mr. Mason, the adoptive father-in-law of Daisy, was not present, and I thought that one could have been shown, but once again, quite as easily, that made it an extra 3 minutes longer, and he would have been the first character I would have said to cut. So that's probably right on the good side of the line there.
Yeah.
But instead of just a ton of characters and give them all fair play is impossible. I mean, you just got to focus. Hopefully, if they do a sequel, they can shift the focus to kind of another couple.
Yeah,
people.
move it around exactly. Yeah. So.
All right. Well, that was my. If you like Downton, go see it. If you like good period pieces, go see it. If you're a fan of dramas or lighthearted dramas, go see. Not all dramas have to be heavy and dark. No. I mean, there can be some good lighthearted dramas that just are dramas because they're not inherently, Pink Panther stumble over, funny, or they don't have a huge amount of action. This is kind of one of those good lighthearted dramas. It's got some good witty lines in it. If you're going to see it this is actually one to see on the big screen too, I think, in a way, because the sets and the houses and the wealth is just it's extravagant. I mean, it's like really will be impressed seeing it on the big screen. If you like well written, if you like high amounts of dialogue and lots of little storylines kind of interweaving, then I think you'll really like it. If you're going in expecting action, no. If lots of dialogue and lots of English accents make you go to sleep, then definitely not. But otherwise, I'd take it a try. I think it's accessible enough. They explain enough about who the characters are in their relation to each other that you can pick up on it. Now, obviously, you're not going to know all the backstories and storylines and the rich history, but they give you enough that you can be comfortable.
Well, and also with this, it's one of those films. If you're going to go and enjoy it, there's more, because if you haven't watched the series, you go watch this, and you're like, oh, it immediately makes all the rest of those accessible, because you can go back and start the series and be like, oh, okay, and then you got. How many seasons did it run?
6.
6, yeah,
and about 7, 8, 9 episodes per series, depending on which series.
Yeah, so.
And also the episodes range from an hour to hour and a half. It's like some of them are like little movies.
Yeah. So.
But going back, we watched seasons 5 and 6 again leading up to the movie to refresh us, and now we've actually started over back at season 1 again. And it's funny going back to the first, like any show, going back to the very first episode, you're like, wow, this is a little different than how it ended up.
Yeah.
Just because it takes a little bit of time to find which path they want to go with everyone, and also there are some cast changes as far as like. Not major, well, there's major, but there's only about 2 or 3 major changes as far as like deaths or whatever else. It's not like a constant, like, people dropping left and right, but it's not a Game of Thrones kind of situation. But there are a couple major deaths throughout the series, and it's somebody that's just starting off the first episode and then go see the movie, you're going to be like, well, where's so-and-so and where's so-and-so? Yeah. So anyway, that's our review for Downton Abbey, and please check out our other reviews, and remember to like and subscribe.
Thanks for watching.